when I started this real job, which was working on like satellite, like shock and vibration simulation for satellite launches, it was like a big reality check that I couldn't go skiing every day anymore, and it kind of bothered me to be a weekend warrior. It just wasn't like in my DNA or whatever that I was satisfied doing that. I think I was like I had skied like 120 days or something the season
Whoa.
before. Yeah. And I overheard somebody in the gym at work one day, like, yeah, dude, I got 28 days last year. It was so good. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't do that. And so I was like, well, what can I do every day? Like, what's something I can really do every day? And I was cycling. I lived like, 30 kilometers from work or something. So started riding my bike to work,
Where were
um,
you?
Denver. Yeah, and so I started riding my bike to work a lot, and got into that. Met some people who were into racing. They kind of nudged me to try racing, and so I did like amateur racing in the U.S. for a couple of years, and then yeah, I guess if you fast forward like 5 years, I was racing for this team called Primal. I guess most people listening probably know like Primal clothing, and they were forming a team in the UK as well, and they were like in this kind of I think it was called Elite National or like domestic elites, one of these like just below pro divisions. And like I know the director's goal was to turn it into a continental team. He invited me over to race. He was just like, not me personally. He kind of said to our team in Colorado, like, hey, if anybody wants to come over and ride with us, like you guys, somebody should do it. And I think I'd actually like I'd never even been to Europe. It was like even for vacation or something, I had never. Uh, I'd skied in South America before, but like besides that, like pretty much North American. And I thought like, yeah, that'd be cool. Like I'll go over, and I went over for like 1 week. I did a couple races with them, um, and then like a month later, he was like, why don't you just come race with us next year? And I just made this decision so fast. I think I called up one friend and like I was like, this is kind of crazy, but like if I don't do this, I'm gonna regret it, right? And he was like, yeah, totally. So uh,
What did you specialize in as a cyclist at that point in time? Like, were you an all arounder? I'm getting the feeling maybe you were a climber.
maybe like leaning towards climber, but like yeah, all arounder. I had a good VO2 max and a horrible anaerobic power.
What was your
Uh,
VO2 max?
in it was 75. What is it? Milliliters per minute per
Okay.
kilo. Yeah. Um, Yeah, so like I had a good VO2 max, and also like this good, like I could repeat the effort over and over again. So I was good in these races that kind of like grind you down. But when it came to like a long, like a climb over 20 minutes, that with like sections over 10 or 12%, I started to fall off from like the real climbers.
In what year was this that you were going for this cycling career?
Yeah, this was 2015.
2015. So were you doing like Redlands, Tour of the Gila, or were you more focused on crits and regional stuff?
I had never done Redlands, but yeah, I did like Gila, Cascade, Joe Martin,
Yeah.
Green Mountain Stage Race.
This is back when this all this stuff was still happening. I think they just announced that the Joe Martin race is not happening this year, I believe.
Oh, that's really sad. I mean, that was like
Yeah.
one of my big, like first big results in like a Cat 1-2 race. I got like fifth at Joe Martin, and
What happened in that race?
I remember the road race. Like, yeah, what did happen? I mean, I just stayed in the group for a long time, and with like 40K to go, it slowed down, and just I saw one guy go off the front, and like I said, like my anaerobic power was always like just absolutely horrible, and I could never like attack and get away. It was super frustrating. And in this one case, like I got lucky. I don't think I even attacked. I think I just rolled off the front, but it was like 150K into the race, and basically nobody cared, and they just let me roll up the road. And there was like another guy a little bit up the road, so like we didn't get the win, but like yeah, I ended
Yeah.
up like in a really nice position there.
Who were the big teams at that time? Was it like UHC or who were the hitters in 2015,
Oh
2014?
god, yeah, Optum was the big one.
Optum.
Yeah,
Is that Prime Alliance or is that a different team?
I don't know. That's a good
Okay.
question.
All right. So Optum. And didn't Optum became Rally, I think, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there were some hitters at that race and you pulled off a fifth.
That was like the 1-2 race. I wasn't in the pro race at that time.
Yeah, still, it's a good result.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, what was your vision of what you thought might be possible for yourself, or was this just more of a, hey, this is an interesting lifestyle, I'm going to just kind of like explore this? What did you think was possible for you as a cyclist at that point?
That's a good question. I think, completely naive about it, but also like a little bit lost. So I remember when I started racing, this is like 2009 or something. I got fourth the first time I went to mountain bike nationals for
Whoa. And like elite or expert or what?
uh, expert. Yeah, Cat One.
That's a great, it's a great result. Wow.
So I was like, okay, like maybe I could like win one of these, and then like that was like my focus for like 4 years. I was like, I want to win like national championship, and then I did it in 2013, and it opened up a lot of doors for me, as far as like getting CAT upgrades and like talking to other teams. But I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I think like I had these delusions of going into like a pro team, although I kind of quickly realized they were not going to happen. At some point I realized like I was just kind of going for the experience and to do something to try and see what it's like. Um, and I think I had this mix of like aimlessness where I didn't really have this concrete goal of like I want to win this race. It was like it was always like, yeah, I want to like, the next race, and then you do bad in that one, and then it's like, well, okay, with the next one, but like you don't have a lot of commitment or like buy-in to like one particular objective. And at the same time I had this kind of like naivety that like I could actually do well and move up without having like these stepping stones to get there. Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I was totally immature about it. But that's okay. That's part of life. That's how you learn. And now at this point, like I'm glad I did it. But like at the time, like I don't know what I was doing. I was just kind of like following my gut, I guess, and like my
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah. It sounds like that probably benefited you because a lot of, I mean, I think particularly within the cycling development system, most people start at a quite young age. They get quite serious, and there's probably a lot of fear in addition to the desire or drive to do the thing. There's probably a lot of fear of what if this doesn't work out? What if I fail? They have a deep understanding of all the nuances of the development system. And for you at that moment in time when you decided to jump over to the UK, how old were you?
I think 26.
So, okay, so you're 26. You are working as an aerospace engineer. I have to imagine you're probably very highly compensated at that point in time for a person that age doing that kind of job.
Yeah, for a 26-year-old, yeah, I was doing
Yeah,
pretty well.
yeah, you were making some dolo. So, did you have any fear about stepping away from that, or did you kind of feel like, well, if this doesn't work out, I can just go back to making a pile of money doing this thing that I'm good at?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like I had this one phone call with my friend Eric, and that's basically what he said. He was like, "You have marketable skills. You can make money. Like, you can make money again. Like, this is not a one-time thing.
Yeah,
You should go do this."
yeah. And so you made the jump. Once you actually committed and were all in, were you excited? Or did you then at that point feel a little bit of like, oh shit, I just I just stepped off the edge. What's gonna happen now?
I was super excited. Uh, Maybe too much so that I maybe didn't handle stepping off the edge as well as I could have. But
Say more about
yeah.
that. But what did you do?
I think I had this weird like it's so when, especially like working like a full-time job and trying to race and train and everything, I had this a little bit of like a cocky attitude, like I made it here like despite having like these obstacles and like all these other commitments in my way. And so now that those are all like now that those chains are off, I have like complete freedom. And I think I realized later like those constraints were a bit more of guardrails than barriers. uh,
Interesting.
and, and that like they kind of prevented me from overtraining, right? And then it's like I did partially end up in this like, oh, if I have a problem, like I just need to train more, right? That's like the hammer that you try to beat every nail with. And I think I didn't really account for like the cultural adaptation of moving to a new country and new place. There are so many things that like you just take for granted at home. Like you go to the supermarket, you can go shopping in like 10 minutes because you know where everything is. You know all the things that you normally buy, and like I think I had a meltdown in the supermarket one time, like what cereal do I buy? Because it was just like, decision number, 1000 of the day. And I was like, it's just stuff that's so automatic to you. And then this feeling of like, oh, and I have to get like 6 hours of training in today because like that's the thing I do now. I think it would have been a lot better in hindsight to say like, some things you can control, and it's good to kind of like, there's this balance of like taking responsibility for things that you need to succeed, but also a recognition that like you can't make everything perfect. And so you have to kind of prioritize and say like, what, there's a lot of new stuff here. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to focus my energy on trying to do like get comfortable with this thing and do this thing really well. And just understand that like some other things are not going to go so well. And maybe I'm not going to, you know, get the perfect breakfast cereal or something like that. But like, and once you get comfortable in one area and it starts to become automatic, you can move on and try to optimize other things. But I really wanted like everything to be perfect. And I got into this like perfectionist mindset, and it ended up paralyzing me.
Yeah, and when you're stepping into a supermarket and you're trying to find cookies and they're called biscuits, you're just adding a tremendous amount of cognitive load. I have to wonder also, and this is an aspect of professional cycling that I think the average person really doesn't think about too much. If you watch something like the Zwift Academy series, I don't know if you've watched that, but I think part of what's really interesting about it is, they bring in a set of riders who have proven on Zwift that they have the physical capacity to compete at the world tour level. And then, they then have to repeat that in real life around other people, which is a little different than on a trainer. And it really seems like the biggest filter is, does this person fit in on a team? And more specifically, can they get along with a diverse group of people under really high stress, high consequence circumstances? So for you, once you were over in the UK and this was your full-time thing, how did you adapt to that aspect of it? Just being on a team and needing to be a teammate.
It was hard, for sure, especially because like I'd only been on one amateur team. I didn't like really jump around from team to team, and so coming into a new team that's basically established, and we were this group. There were three of us, one guy from Catalonia and one guy from France, and the team was 12 people, so it was like nine British people who had all been there the year before, and then the three of us outsiders, and we all shared a house together. And I mean, it was bizarre. Like, I got along with like a lot of my teammates, but there definitely was friction. And also like a lot of, I guess like, I thought I was going to do well in these races, and I started not doing well. And then everybody just beats up. It's like the circular thing of like, I want to be there. I want to do well for myself. I want to be there for my teammates. And it's just like, yeah, it wasn't going well. I guess I kind of lost a little bit of like exactly the question.
Yeah, I think. Well, when you showed up in this team, and so where were you all based out of? Where was this house?
So the three of us were in Plymouth, but the team was kind of, so this is like Southwest England.
Yeah,
But the team was spread out. There was like some people in Plymouth in the Southwest, also some people up in Manchester.
yeah,
So there was like this element of like some people, I wouldn't even see them except for on race day.
yeah. And did you have an understanding of what your role was supposed to be within the team when you showed up?
Uh, no,
No.
I didn't.
Yeah. And so when you met the other guys, I mean, did you think, hey, this is when I start winning? Or did you think I'm here to support these guys? Were there a lot of different personalities?
Yeah, there were a lot of different personalities. I think, yeah, I didn't have a lot of clarity. I think I was supposed to start winning, and then when that didn't happen, yeah, I don't know. I did not. Yeah, to answer your question, I really had no idea what I was doing in there.
Yeah. And over time, how did that become apparent to you? Was there any pressure? Did your teammates have any expectations of you that they shared with you?
Uh, I mean, over time, this is like over a short amount of time. So, kind of what happened was, I think by like May or something, there were some obvious issues in the team with like budget and stuff like this. I was kind of like out of I mean, the season starts in February. Like, I think by April, I was kind of like out of the A team race squad
Yeah.
anyway. Um, and my French teammate was having issues as well. So like I was actually like kind of ready to go back to America. Like when I quit my job in engineering, my boss actually like he didn't let me fully quit. He said take a 1 year leave of absence. Like if something goes wrong, just come back here. Um, I almost did that. I mean, I was really like on the verge of doing that, and then my French teammate was like, "Hey, just like come over to France. Like we've got a spare bedroom at my parents' house, and I'll show you a little bit around the French racing scene." And I kind of checked, all the visa rules and stuff, and like, I can spend like 3 months or whatever in France without a visa. And I was like, yeah, well, the leave of absence is still valid. When's the next time? I'm like, I'm already here. I got my bike. Like, just spend 3 months doing this, and then I'll go back. Right. That obviously did not happen. Uh, the 3 months turned into, I guess it's like coming up on 10 years now. So yeah, I mean, like, I literally like I again like packed all of my stuff into a few suitcases and took the ferry over from England to Calais. I rented a car and I only stayed a month with my teammate. That's another story. But yeah, I ended up like kind of moving around, living out of the car, and racing a lot that summer.
What was your understanding of what French racing was like in French teams before you ended up in France?
I had no understanding of it. Really, just
Yeah.
like, I mean, I had, like I said, like I had never even been to Europe before, so it was like from America, it's like you see the Tour de France on TV, and that's it. But like the whole French like elite scene, I had no idea what I was getting into.
And I'd love to hear how you would characterize it. My understanding of the French domestic scene, so and world tour teams as well, but in particular the continental pro teams, whatever they're called now. So it's kind of the second tier of racing that happens within France for anybody who's listening that's not super deeply familiar with professional cycling. So this is the highest level of professional cycling someone could do within France. I have to imagine that these squads are also competing around Europe in lower tier UCI level races, but they're not like going to the Tour de France. And historically, as somebody who's been a journalist and fan of the sport for quite a while now, a couple of decades, French teams typically are very old school and like super hard ass is kind of how I would describe the management style and the methods that they use. And that kind of holds true today. They tend to not be on the cutting edge of technology. It's more a lot of old school. Hey, we don't use air conditioning in the hotel rooms because you're going to end up getting a cold. It's going to ruin your, like, just a lot of stuff like that. Or there's also a lot of dietary restriction on French teams. I hear a lot of stories coming out of even world tour teams about that. You've actually lived it. So how does the reality mirror or not the outside world's perception of what's going on inside of these French teams?
Yeah, spot on.
Oh, okay. So like you show up and you meet how do you end up on a French team? And then I would love to hear some anecdotes about, what were they saying to you about your training, about your diet,
Yeah,
that
I
type of
mean,
stuff.
so I ended up with a director who was not a hard ass,
Okay.
but definitely like old school. And like, so yeah, so the way I ended up on a French team was after this summer, so like 2015, I I had a French friend at this point, and like he helped me put together a resume, and I literally there's like 70 I think like elite teams in France, and I basically like I found the director's email for every single one of them, and I emailed it to everyone. And I ended up talking to like I don't know 4 or 5 teams, and for me like I ended up going with like kind of a lower division team, but I really liked the director. He seemed like really honest. I had seen already from like a few of the other scenes around Europe, like a lot of people promise like, yeah, we're gonna go to all these like huge races and I'm gonna give you like a free bike and like all this stuff and everything. And this, I through a few email exchanges and Google Translates with this director, he was very like, look, we're a small team, a lot of volunteer staff, but like this is the stuff we can do for you. This is the stuff we can't do for you. But like we'd love to have you. And I thought like this guy just seems really honest and down to earth. And that's kind of the environment that I'd rather be in. And so I ended up going to this team. But yeah, I mean no air conditioning, like borderline religious about food, and like always eating pasta like 3 hours to the minute before the race starts. Like race starts at 11 a.m. They're all there eating pasta at 8 a.m. I I mean, I remember one time we were at like a stage race, and it was like one of these days where you had like a time trial in the morning and then a road race in the afternoon. And like, I think the time trial, the first start was like at 8 a.m. And everybody was freaking out because like we were in this like, we were put up in this like tech school, like a trade, like agricultural trade school dorm. And it was like a big, very like fluorescent lighting and like a, like a 1950s hospital vibe, cafeteria, and it's like everybody's like, oh my god, like are they going to open breakfast for pasta at 5 a.m. because like the race the time trial's at 8, and I was like, I think you can do like a 12K time trial or something without like your pasta 3 hours before routine. So this was like quite entertaining. But yeah, I think at this time, like it had been a year in Europe, and I had learned to lighten up a little bit and not be so hard on myself about all of these things. And like, okay, I can go with the flow and like still do okay with it.
When you applied to be on these different teams, your race resume, did that have your power numbers, your VO2 max? Like, what were they actually looking at to evaluate whether they wanted to work with you?
I don't remember if it had my power numbers. I think just my race results. I ended up with like quite a few good race results that summer. And so I just put some things like, yeah, I'm American, these race results, and so on. I'm pretty sure in my team, I was the only person who actually owned a power meter.
Wow.
I don't think they would have.
Okay.
I don't think they would have known what to do with those numbers.
Yeah, I feel like you had an SRM. Am I right?
You are right. I did.
Okay, you just strike me as an SRM kind of guy.
They seem to be kind of out these days. No.
Oh, they're back. They're
Okay.
back. Yeah, well, particularly at the world tour level for amateurs who are coming up, because there can be such variance in the accuracy of commercially available power meters. World tour teams regard the SRM as the gold standard. So typically, if you want to get onto a world tour team and you want them to trust your power numbers, it's the best move is just to like ride on an SRM because that's
Okay.
accepted as being legit.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in time, like I think power meters now. I actually don't have one. I get the sense power meters now are probably like pretty reliable. But like back, this is like 10 years ago, right? And like I think in like 2013 or 14, I had tried a couple of the other brands that were out, and there would be some where it was like it's humid and it doesn't work. Like
Right.
they were so sensitive.
Yeah, you sneeze and the power meter stops working.
Yeah.
When you were in France, you're racing, you're on this team. What did you like about the racing and how did you find it relative to what you'd experience in the United States?
That's a good question about what I liked. I never really thought about it. I liked it and I kept doing it for a couple of years. um, yeah, it's definitely different from the US, like in a lot of ways. So one is of course like the format, although they do have this race. It's called a nocturne, and it's very similar to a criterium, only longer. They tend to be about 2 hours instead of 1 hour, and they start at like 10 p.m. and so they finish at midnight. And it's like often like in city centers and stuff, and you're just like going through the streets late at night, and a lot of time they don't put lights out. I mean, it's France, like so you have to like learn where the potholes and stuff are during warm up, and like to avoid them in the corners. I actually like it wasn't really my style. I was like more into like the long hilly road race. For whatever reason, I love these nocturnes. Like they were just so much fun. Um, and then doing like the long road races. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it is in the U.S. now, but like even 10 years ago, like there wasn't a ton of long road races in the U.S. Like there were a couple of big ones, yeah, like Cascade and Gila and stuff. But these were like, a few special weekends in the calendar. Whereas like in France, I think every week, like you could do two or three races that are like the short ones are 120K, but you can also find like 150 to 180K road races. I mean, I loved it. That was cool. That was like you know, living the dream a little bit. And then also just like the pack sizes. Again, I don't know how it is now in America, but like a lot of P1-2 races in the US were like, 40 to 60 people would show up. Whereas like races would regularly have 200 people in them in France. And on these like really narrow roads. So you start to learn a lot more about like pack positioning, and it's really important to stay at the front, as the cliche goes. But like the peloton can be like strung out so long that like if you're at the back, like you literally can't see the front. It's just somewhere down the road. And so I don't know. It was a really interesting experience. And then also just like physiologically, I mean, I had never had problems with like cramping, for example, and then I start cramping like in the middle of the season, and I'm just kind of like angry about it, like how come I've never had this problem? What's going on? And then of course you look at it a year later, say like, oh yeah, I used to do like 40 crits a year, and now I'm trying to do like 70 road races that are like 150K. It adds up. It takes several years to develop the ability to take that kind of volume, and I didn't have it.
How about intellectually? Because professional cycling has all kinds of people involved in it, and you're not necessarily around people who are rocket scientists or aerospace engineers a lot of the time. And I mean, you'd come from a highly intellectually stimulating environment where you were using your brain in a really different way. What was it like to then be a professional athlete in a different environment with a totally different set of people?
I actually really enjoyed this part of it. I'm quite introverted. I like a lot of solitude. So to the training aspect, that like I could go out and ride a lot and had like a lot of time on my own, uh, even just to think about random stuff. I really enjoyed that. Um, and then off the bike, I had this one year. I read so many books. Like I lived in this like small apartment, and the building had like the worst Wi-Fi. It would just drop out for like sometimes 2 or 3 days at a time. And so I would always keep like a backlog of unread books on my Kindle. And then if the internet went out for a couple of days, I mean, my day was sometimes just like, wake up, have breakfast, read a book, go out and do some training, come home, eat lunch, and just read a book for 6 hours until dinner time, and then read a book and go to sleep. And I don't know, I would get bored reading the same book all day, so I was reading like 3 books in parallel quite often, just to switch. I was like changing the channel. I actually kind of enjoyed that. Like, I don't know if I'd want to do it forever, but I enjoyed that side of it, and I was happy or thankful that I had like an education and something to fall back on, because kind of like you said, like there are a lot of people that they leave high school, they don't go to university, they're all in on cycling. And like, I mean, for everybody you see in the world tour, there's 10,000 people who tried and didn't make it. Um, and a lot of them don't have a lot of good career prospects. So I mean, I spent a lot of time, kind of whining, like I started racing when I was 22 or 23. Oh, what if I had started earlier? Like I could have done all these things. Like I could have really made it, but like I also could have, you know, crashed and broken a leg or something and been shit out of luck. So yeah, it's kind of tough actually to see that like you see a lot of people who are like dedicating themselves fully to this thing, and that they might not have a lot of options if they don't make it.
Did you get jammed up with any injuries, or were you involved in any major wrecks?
Uh, Nothing too physically major. I got pretty lucky in that regard. Most of my crashes were more hurting my ego or uh, my psyche.
At what point did you feel like this needed to go in some direction?
So that was kind of funny. Like I don't think I had like a particular moment like that. I was thinking like there's two paths out of this, and neither of them ended up being true. I thought one is like I will have a bad accident and I'll just basically be forced to end this. And option two is that like yeah, I make it and have some like glorious big win or something and quit while I'm ahead. Um, what happened in reality was like I just got interested in other things, and I started like especially economics and computer programming. I started like reading a lot about this stuff and like trying to build some of my own computer programs. Um, and eventually, like I think it was like probably March of 2017 or something. I told my director, I was like, I'm just like glued to my computer, like Kindle, trying to learn about this stuff, and like I'm having trouble kind of going out to train. Um, and
Was
I
he
asked
like
like,
was he like, what's wrong with you, Joe? What are you doing?
no, I mean, I think he probably saw the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny. Like, so I asked him, I was like, can I take 1 month off from racing and like just let me kind of like find a routine where I can like get the balance of this going. And that was like actually my plan. When I asked him that, I thought like I will take a month off and kind of like collect myself and get back into this season. Uh, but I knew the next day, like I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm not thinking about training and stuff like this. And it felt so like liberating that, uh, and I just knew, I just knew I was like, it's over. It's for sure over. And that was kind of like the end of it. And I started working on some of these other projects.
The moral of the story here, I don't want to dime you out to future employers, but don't give Joe a sabbatical. I think that that's one of the takeaways from this episode. He's not coming back. And so over time, how did that lead to what you're doing now, and what are you doing?
Yeah. So now I work on this project called polkadot, which is a blockchain protocol. So I started out actually working on trading algorithms, which I thought like I had worked in like shock and vibration simulation, and I really liked this idea of like algorithmic trading. It felt very much like cycling to me, actually, um, in the sense that like when you have a bike race, compared to other sports like like soccer or something, one team wins and one team loses. Whereas like in a bike race, there's 200 people, um, and you might even think like just one of them wins, but that's not entirely true. Like some people have other goals, like they want to win like the climber's jersey, they want to win a stage, the sprinter's jersey, or like I mean, some people just want to be on TV or like get in the breakaway. Like there's a lot of different definitions of success that people have in a bike race, and also a lot of different strategies. It's not just like score more goals. Um, and also like in markets, I thought this was cool. Like there are people who are doing like really short-term trading. There are like big hedge funds or like pension funds. They're just going to like rebalance their accounts like every quarter or something, right? And there's some people who want to make money fast. There's some people who want like, basically to get like market equal returns over time, and like so there's all these like different participants, and they have different objectives and different strategies and different definitions of success. And I thought like this environment like competitively is actually a lot like cycling, and that I had like the background in time series analysis from vibration simulation. I was like, a stock price in kind of short term, it actually looks like a random time signal, and like this would be a kind of cool environment to participate in. So I ended up doing that for like 2 years and like trying to write my own strategies and algorithms, and like some of them worked, some of them didn't. I did get like a little bit. I started to move on from like the finance, like interest in the finance part, and more into like the computer science part and like the cryptography and like how a lot of stuff was actually working, and also like the implications that it had on a more social level. And that's what, well, part of what led me to look for some other work, and end up joining the project that I work on now. And the other part was like I worked on like a couple startup projects, and they all kind of like fizzled out, or like they didn't get funding, or like there was like a battle between the founders. Like this stuff all happens in startups, so I ended up joining this company. It had like 50 people at the time. Now it's quite a bit bigger, and I thought this was like a more interesting project with like a bigger like social vision to work on. So yeah, that's how I ended up kind of transitioning.
What aspects of the social vision and intellectually do you find to be interesting or stimulating about this specific area where you're focused now?
Yeah, so it's particularly about like the the structures of the tools that we use, or like the architecture of the tools that we use, and the embedded trust assumptions. So when you use something like I guess like Strava or Twitter or Instagram, you're placing a lot of trust in that intermediary. And I think for a lot of people, like especially if you're from like a Western country, that trust is often upheld. But there's a lot of people for which it's not, and also like it could be upheld 99.999% of the time, but the problem to me is that like a lot of people don't even realize that they're placing this trust. Like they don't realize the kind of power that these intermediaries have. And I thought like it's fine for people to offer services like this and for people to use them, but there should also be an alternative, some way that you can build a digital service without needing to trust somebody.
I mean, how do you think about trust in this context? And the part of what I'm thinking about the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and he talks a lot in that book about how a lot of institutions, whether it's religion, government, monetary system, our identity as a nation, these are all stories that are things that people collectively buy into. And it's only because we buy into the story that we can then have trust to do things like have money, for example, or have a government or have laws. How do you think about trust in the context of what you're doing and what you're building?
Yeah, I think this book is one of those ones that I read, like, in my little apartment in France with no internet. Um, so it's been a while, but I do remember this part about it. And this comes up a lot. I think trust is actually a little bit of a misleading word because we mostly think of trust as a good thing. Like interpersonal trust is a very good thing. And I think what Harari is kind of referring to there is that like it takes a lot of time an investment to build interpersonal trust with somebody. So you have a very like finite number of people with whom you can have interpersonal trust. And so
150.
yeah, and so these institutions allow people to interact with each other without having to go through the investment of building that interpersonal trust directly
Right.
themselves. Um, a lot of times, I think like when I'm talking about trust in this case, it's actually like blind faith. Uh, it's like trust still implies that like you have some evidence to convince you that something will happen. Whereas like a lot of times when you use a digital service, you have basically blind faith that they're going to actually like carry out that service faithfully.
Should people have less trust in their digital services?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And why is that?
I think they're often used for things that they weren't intended to be used for. So if you look at Twitter, for example, like it gets used for like protest organization and like first aid coordination. Like the tool was not designed for that, right? And it's cool that people have found this new use for a new technology and a new way to organize and like create stories together. But you are but these tools are often vulnerable, especially to like legal or nation state type of, you might call them, attacks, right?
Right.
Like because there is like one company that's at the center of this thing, it can work perfectly fine until a government says, "Hey, turn it off in my country." And you, I think when people use these services, they sometimes take for granted, it really can disappear.
Yeah, completely. Or there are sovereign wealth funds from governments that are investors in some of these services. And then it gets a little cloudy about, well, what's potentially happening on the back end. And then, there are end user licensing agreements, privacy policies that contain contain a lot of things that could potentially be happening to your data that you don't know about as well, or I
Yeah,
mean that you're consenting to but you may not want to have happen, that enables a lot of things to happen. And it's,
yeah,
I mean, they're digital services, and then I mean there actually are phones, and this has been written about quite a bit, including the New York Times did uh, a giant piece about it a while back. But like what's possible just by you carrying around a geolocation device at all times, that's, and what that actually means in terms of surveillance that you're consenting to by having a device.
yeah. I mean, it's like, and I don't like even when you talk about like this, like like to consent to something. I think most people have um, an understanding of consent as something that's like contextual and can be revoked, right? Like we can agree to do something in our like in a personal relationship and we can have boundaries, but these boundaries can change. Like it's basically like constantly being negotiated, right? Like I can always say like, you know what, I'm not cool with this anymore, right? uh, but with like, yeah, digital surveillance, the stuff lives in a database forever. Like once the data exists, like it can't be taken away. um, and I don't think people always think through the fact that like you're not just like consenting that like, oh yeah, you can see my location now, like that will be remembered forever. Somebody can look it up in 50 years from now.
Yeah. And I'm just curious when you think about you kind of described pattern recognition or kind of the co-opetition that happens inside of cycling, which is incredibly dynamic. And for people who don't follow the sport closely, it's not obvious, right? They're just like, well, somebody crossed the line. Why are all these people riding in a group? Why doesn't one person just, and anyone who's participated in the sport, and particularly someone like you who's participated in it at a very high level, understands it's incredibly dynamic, it's stochastic, and it's highly complex. When you think about what you know now and with what you've done as a software engineer, as a thinker in this space, and you look at professional cycling, do you ever think about how methods and technologies that you're now aware of could be applied, like for pattern recognition as applied to professional cycling?
Pattern recognition in professional cycling.
Yeah, I don't know, just like this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I actually think because professional cycling has gone in this direction of maximal optimization, but when I'm watching, like this week I was watching, I don't know if you watch pro cycling anymore, but Wout van Aert had a horrible wreck, and there are a lot of things that happen within professional cycling races where the riders of the teams actually have a high degree of control, and they're doing things because it's the way they've always been done. And I think that you probably could apply some kind of analysis to come up with better methods. Just as a for example, if you watch professional cyclists in a pack, if they want to eat or drink, they have to reach for a bottle or they have to reach into their jersey pocket. I recently was thinking that's kind of a long way to move your arm when you're surrounded by 200 other people who are touching you all the time while you're going 35 miles an hour. Why should your gels be in the back of your outfit? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are rules saying you can't have it somewhere else, but I bet you could come up with more optimal positioning of that, or times in a race when it's like, hey, statistically, it's a very low probability you're going to wreck at this moment. This would be a better time to eat or drink.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Now I understand the question, and like, yes, totally. I mean, I really like statistics and just this field of math in particular. And I that's something I thought about a lot. I mean, I think there are a lot of corollaries in business and technology as well. But like this, you have this conundrum where if you if you never eat or drink, you will very quickly run out of energy, and like you have zero chance of winning the race, right? But like every single time that you eat or drink, you are taking a chance that like the guy in front of you could touch wheels and just take you out, right? So like um, if you think about like at any given moment in time, if you think should I eat or drink like right now, the answer is objectively no. Like you should definitely not take that risk of destroying a race and like ending up in a pile up because you wanted to gel at like this particular second. But if you always make the rational decision, then like you'll never eat or drink, and you will definitely not win the race. And so like you have to do something, right? And the chances or like the odds are like it's very skewed odds, and I think these are interesting statistical problems. And like you can say the same about big companies. They try to sit on their moat forever, and it's like, you know, if they do nothing, they will be out competed. But um, you know, and then it's like, well, what do you do? And it could be risky, and like you could lose a lot of like for a company a lot of money when you make a mistake.
Professionally, what kind of problems or challenges interest you now?
Um, Professionally, engineering wise or sport
Yeah,
wise?
sure. I don't know. Just are there areas where you think like this is the kind of stuff I find to be the most interesting to do that I want to go deeper right now?
Yeah, so like I mean, I'm still working on the same project. It's been like 5 years now, um, and I think we're starting to talk about like what's the next generation of this, and like it's almost like a perfect season, right? Like you always think like, oh, if I had just not gotten like injured or sick or something, like I could win all these races if I just had the perfect season. And you start to realize after some time that like even the people who are winning a lot, like they have problems, like they get hurt, they get sick, they have family that they need to go visit, take some days off training. They're able to succeed kind of like despite these things, and like learn from them and how to adapt from them. And I think technology development is very similar. Like I think 5 years ago, I had this like very childish notion that I was building like the perfect piece of technology that like the world was missing. It's very evidently like not true. But we've learned a lot, and it's like, okay, these things work. These were good ideas, but like some of these things were bad ideas. Um, and how do we change them? And like, yeah, I think like in the last 6 months, we've been starting to talk about like, well, what's the next generation of the thing that we want to make, and also like how do we get there, right? Like you can't just create it out of thin air, so it's probably like a 1.5 to 2 year endeavor to create like the next generation of this technology, and then still maintain like, okay, how do we work with what we have for the next 1.5 to 2 years and like actually make it to the next generation of this. um so yeah, I mean, like from an engineering point of view, like I've kind of like, this is very startup-y, but like, I started out as like an engineer, and then like now I'm like a manager of engineers, so I don't do as much engineering myself. Just kind of like by the grace of being here for so long, you end up in like a manager position at startups. So I guess like, yeah, to answer your question, like professionally, I'm learning a lot more about how to manage people. This is like totally new to me, like how to hire people and how to build a team. And I've been doing it like, I guess, a year and a half now, like more focused on like management than engineering. And I think like I can hire better engineers than myself. So professionally, I want to get better at like this team building and being a manager, which of course, like me from 15 years ago, I was like, what does my manager do? They just, I'm the one doing the work, right? But like now it turns out like it's actually quite difficult.
I noticed there are ice axes hanging on the wall behind you, and it's making me think about other dynamic challenges that you might have outside of work that are going on. So, can you talk a little bit about the role that sport plays in your life now, and how did you end up in this spot where you have ice axes and a helmet hanging behind you?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that with my job we had an office in Switzerland, and I was able to come here and work. So I'm in Switzerland now, and I got really, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, really back into skiing, which was, yeah, like this was my childhood passion. Um, and it's, yeah, I don't have, I'm still figuring out the answer to your question, because when I was a kid, I was really into like jumps and rails and stuff. And I'm 37 now, and I can't do it anymore. Uh, I think that part of skiing is gone for me.
You're not out
Um,
there jibbing in the park? Come on, Joe.
I'm not. But
Do you
like,
wear giant pants at least when you're out there?
yeah, I probably baggier pants than most of like the ski mountaineering people. So
Yeah.
I try to keep a little bit of like heritage in there. But yeah, I have this like whole new perspective, especially coming from cycling, because like when I was a kid, like I didn't know anything about training. Like I was just always on like the club soccer team or something, but like always like just for fun. And now that I know about all this stuff, like FTP and like VO2 max and stuff, and can take like a little bit of a training approach to it. I found like I enjoy a lot more aspects of skiing. There's like everything, like from like the ski resort, skimo, where people are just, it's basically like running up the piste. And like, I get kind of grouchy about this term because it's not skiing and it's not mountaineering. And somehow it got called skimo. Uh, but, grouchiness about semantics aside, I still kind of enjoy it. But also like, when it's a good powder day to be out skiing powder, but also like when conditions are safe to be out doing like more mixed climbing, like steep couloirs, technical mountaineering with ropes and stuff. And I'm not exactly sure where it's going. I know that I'm really present when I'm doing it, and like I really enjoy it, and I'm super motivated about it. So I'm kind of in this like discovery phase of like, yeah, what do I want to do next? But also I guess like, yeah, mature enough at this age that I can like recognize that I'm in the discovery phase and not be like, oh, I don't have an objective. What am I doing? I feel totally lost. It's just, hey, this I'm having a lot of fun with this. I'm going to keep doing it and kind of see where it goes.
What's your mental model for how you approach it then? If there's not an objective, is it just, I want to allocate as much time as possible to do this thing that I enjoy? Or how do you think about your relationship with the sport?
Partly, I guess like I wouldn't say I'm like completely without objective. I do have like a list of, I guess like a lot of things like mountains that I want to ski and climb. Um, they don't really have a theme. Like I think before recording, you were talking about Cody and this like 50 project,
Yeah.
which I think is like awesome. It's like one of the coolest projects ever. Um, so I have like kind of a mix of stuff. Like some of it's like big traverses, like 4 or 5 thousand meters of climbing and like trying to set like FKTs on stuff like this. Other stuff is like like skiing some real steep faces or like doing some first descents, like stuff that has never been climbed or skied before. I would really like to do something like that. So I still have some objectives, but I don't have like a single project that's linking them all together. So yeah, I guess I go about it like I try to stay pretty fit. When it's nice snow, I'm out skiing powder, and when the conditions are right, I kind of try to go for something a little bit more ambitious, and also get home safe. So yeah, I don't know if that's like a real like philosophical approach to it. It's just that I'm enjoying it a lot, and I I'm I think I'll like eventually converge in a direction of a project that's like probably quite similar to something like 50.
Yeah. Enjoying it a lot sounds better than a philosophical approach to me. Sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.